Is Ayn Rand still relevant? That's the question we're going to seek to answer today by overviewing her book, Atlas Shrugged, and talking about the differences between libertarianism and conservatism. I'm John Henderson with the Conservative Book Society. Let's get to it. The 30,000-foot view of Ayn Rand's magnum opus, Atlas Shrugged, is premised on this. It's America in a dystopian future. The government as we know it today no longer exists. It's a form of socialism or communism or fascism, one of those isms that is controlling the country. There are a handful of true free market thinkers, free enterprise folks like Dagny Taggart who are trying to save the country. And those folks are up against this bureaucratic government that is just really riding their backs, trying to crush everything in existence. And so we've got the heroine of the story, Dagny Taggart, trying to save her family's railroad, the Taggart Continental Railroad. And then we've got her feckless brother, Jim Taggart, who is just, sucking up to all the bureaucrats. He is just an enormous leech on the system. He does nothing good. He is driving the company into the ground, and she is battling him. And so the question that we see in here is rather what happens if the producers are removed from the world? What if the men and women who are most responsible for new inventions and employing people and coming up with great ideas in science and medicine and all these various different fields, art, athletics even, what if they all just decided to go on strike? What would this all be like if everybody said, you know what, I've had enough of your socialist schemes, we're going to go on strike? And so that is the setup of the story that Ayn Rand tells. Atlas Shrugged features a host of characters that are fantastic. We have Hank Rearden, the steel magnate, and we've got other folks. But one of the primary characters is a guy named John Galt. And that begins early in the book. You start hearing this, who is John Galt? And so I'm not going to tell you here who John Galt is because I don't want to ruin the story for you. But I encourage you to go find out for yourself. Who is John Galt? And there are three main points that I want you to know as you approach this book, or that everyone needs to know about this book. Is number one, she states the case for capitalism better than anybody else by showing us how terrible it would be if we were involved in some sort of socialist scheme, or the larger our government gets, as it's becoming now, that these bureaucrats are breathing down all of our throats, trying to make us do things that we don't want to do, and trying to crush the souls of the most productive people in society. She proves why socialism, communism, fascism, all of that stuff is terrible and that we need to stay far away from it. The second thing that she shows us is what it's like, how valuable producers are. To her, the heroes of this story, not the heroine is Dagny Taggart, but the heroes of this story are the producers, the men and women who employ other people. They come up with inventions. They are leaders in science. They are leaders in philosophy and in art and all across the board. She shows us how valuable these folks are by taking them out of society and asking the question, what happened if Atlas stopped holding the world? What happened if these producers stopped holding the world? And by showing us that and giving us a glimpse into that, she really proves how valuable it is for the hardest working individuals out there to continue working hard and be motivated to work hard, and talented people and smart people and all the rest of it to continue working hard. In that discussion, you'll see rugged self-reliance. You'll see individual liberty, obviously free market capitalism, and hard work are values or virtues according to Ayn Rand. The third big point is how terrible all the bureaucrats are. She really does a lot to say, hey, these folks are leeches on the system. So the bureaucrats, individuals like Jim Taggart, Dagny's brother, who are always trying to suck up to these folks, and they're very obsessed with their elite class and fancy dinners and all this sorts of stuff. that doesn't have anything to do with helping most people. Nobody in that class, that sort of liberal elite class, that progressive class as he defines it, and the bureaucratic class that think that they are controlling everybody else's lives, no one in that class actually cares about other human beings. We see that mirrored in today's politics. We see that mirrored in today's the way that many of our corporations are behaving, and other books like Woke Capitalism and Woke Inc. point this out, that this is just a bunch of lip service, that nobody's doing anything any good to try to to try to help people. She makes that point many decades before those others do. It's the do-gooders, the people who are telling us how good they are and patting themselves on the back all the time. Those are the scariest people in society and the people we should be watching out for. Now, what are her limitations? Her limitations bring us to a discussion between libertarianism and conservatism. Conservatives believe that there is a moral code. Libertarians don't believe that. They believe that the free market, individual liberty, those sorts of overarching themes are going to guide people to making responsible decisions. Conservatives believe that there's a moral code. For most conservatives, that is Christianity or Judaism. It's the Judeo-Christian values upon which our country was founded. So for conservatives, there's that moral spine, and from that, individual liberty comes out of it, free markets come out of that, and various other limited government by the people and for the people comes from that. But none of that can exist. None of those ideas exist without that moral foundation, and it's found really in the Bible for conservatives. And so libertarians, by contrast, and this is the thing that conservatives have some beef with libertarians, is that there is no moral code. So she assumes that everybody is going to make fine decisions based on their own self-reliance, based on their own self-interest. And if everybody's acting in their own self-interest, then the world is a happy place. Conservatives don't necessarily agree with that, and there's been considerable criticism for her for lacking some sort of moral code in any of her writings, and just assuming that everything's going to work out just fine as long as everybody is free to do whatever they want to do. So that is the difference between a libertarian and a conservative. Libertarians, there's no central guiding moral code, and for conservatives, the Bible really is the moral code and the foundation of our society. Notwithstanding her lack of moral code in this book, it is a fantastic read. Not only is it full of very smart advice for how we should conduct our society today, this book from the 1950s is really showing us what our future will look like if we don't heed her warnings. It is a wise book. We will see all the mistakes from the past in this book, and we will see the mistakes that we want to avoid in the future in this book. When my wife read it, she barely talked to me for like 2 weeks. It's that entertaining. She is able to marry philosophy and entertainment together like no one else. Strongly encourage you to read this book. Give her a try. I know it's a doozy of a book. It's a big one, but it's well worth the read.